Alrighty, this is going to be part 2. So in the previous video, we set up and installed the plugin. Now we want to go through and set it up for the first person mannequin arms. So that way, this would be how you would kind of go through and set it up for your own character. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and use the default mannequin skeleton because probably most of you are going to have either rigs that are compatible with it or directly using it. So I'll show you a couple other things that you can do anyhow to kind of revert this if you have your own camera bone and stuff like that, because my own character uses that. The first thing that I want to do, let's go ahead and actually I will load up the default map, and I want to actually get rid of that crosshair really quick. So I'm just going to do that. I'll be right back. Alrighty, there we go. The crosshair is disabled. The reason I did that was because, for some odd reason, I don't know why, but the default first-person template crosshair that appears is not actually in the middle of your screen. It is offset, and it has been like that way for several Unreal Engine versions, and I have no clue why that has never been something that was resolved. So anyways, let's continue. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy my own character here, just so I have all of the function calls that I have in it for showing with the example. So that would be on using things like shooting, aiming, reloading, cycling, fire mode, leaning, and all that kind of stuff, just so I don't have to rebind those. So I'm going to press Ctrl W to duplicate, and I'm actually going to go ahead and make a new folder just for this. So I'm going to call it FPS template tutorial, and I'm going to put all my stuff in here. So let's go ahead and drag that into the new folder, and I'll rename it to BP_FPS template tutorial. Now if we open this on up, as you can see, we have a couple different meshes. So we have a head mesh for if you're using a true first-person character. That's obviously optional. So I'm just going to get rid of that. We do not need the third-person body, but we are going to replace the first-person arms. So if we click on this, we can go ahead and set the skeletal mesh to be the mannequin arms, like so. And the only thing we need to do now, really, to kind of get it working is to create the animation blueprint. So we're going to go ahead and set that up really quick. So we're going to right-click, create a new animation blueprint. And for the parent class, we want to select the FPS template anim instance. So this is all the code in C++ that drives everything that you see that is procedural. So we want to go ahead and select that, and then select our mannequin arms. So press OK, and I'm just going to call it animBP_FPS template tutorial. So we open that on up. We have our animation graph. And if we come over here to class defaults, we have some basic settings that you can tweak. So these are kind of like base settings. So aim interpolation speed, the cycling interpolation, and all that kind of stuff. And whenever you are using third person, when you aim and you want to have your head rotate, this is what you would adjust for that. So this would be for your third person view. So again, base settings, not final settings. So these kind of get added onto or subtracted based upon the firearm itself. So the heavier the firearm, the slower the aim interpolation, sight interpolation, the more the rotation lag and motion lag affects you. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and set up the animation graph. Now, I already have a point of reference for you, so if we head over to character related in the plugin and arms, now these are pretty much the same between the two. The only difference is here for the third person, if we come down here, we have the handle head, and this is for, it's not quite finished yet, but this is for aiming the head, so when you tilt it, and the work in progress free look. So that's just so you have a visual cue, but we want to go ahead and just set up the first person because we don't need any of that. So if we head over to the animation graph, here is what we see. So we have the essentials, setting additive, setting the IK, which is also essential, and setting the left hand position. So what we're going to do is just copy all of this and paste it over. Then we can just plug it right on up. And we are just about good to go. We just have to do some adjustments. So first off, we want to set the actual animations to use. So if we open up the state machine for the M4 and open up the state, as you can see here, I have a blend. Now this here is optional. I just wanted to show it kind of as an example because again, I want to give you that point of reference on how you can set things up. So this one has 3 poses for the normal idle, holding a vertical grip, and angled grip, so it's basically just different hand poses. So I don't want any of this, so I'm just going to delete it. And we want to use just the first person idle for our pose. So let's go back, and we're going to do the same thing for the Remington 700, which as you can see is just a single pose. So we delete that, grab the idle, and plug it into the result. Okay, now we got to go back, and we had to set up all of these animation layers. So we have 4 of them. So the easiest way to do that is we simply go to animation layers. We're going to add 4 new animation layers, just like so. And for the sake of this, I'm going to rename them the same. So first one, I'm just going to call set essentials. Second one, set additive. Third one, set IK. And fourth one, set left hand position. All right, now these all have inputs, so let's start from the beginning. So we have set essentials, add an input. Just click the drop-down box if you don't already have it. And I can name them the same as well. You can leave them the same, as it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to leave it as in pose, just for the sake of time. We're going to add inputs for all 4. All right, once that's done, we can just go over here. We can right-click, or sorry, not right-click, but we go to Layer, select any other layer, and then left-hand position. So you can do that, and then it'll just set it back up. So this one's set IK. I'm just going to select any other one, and then go back to set IK, and same thing for set additive, just so it kind of refreshes itself. And then you plug them all into in pose, and you can simply select and refresh the nodes, and they will work right back up. Okay. Now we are not done yet. We have to fill these out because unfortunately it doesn't copy over. So if we start with set essentials, let's come over here to our FPS template set essentials so we can copy and paste stuff over. So let's select everything that is in between the input pose and the output pose. Control C, Control V to paste, place it where you want, and just plug in the component to local to output pose and the input pose to, again, the input. So we did the exact same thing for set additive and all the rest of these. So we're just going to keep going through and paste them in. All right, let's move on to the IK. This one's a short guy. Oops. Paste that on in. And link it back up. And the final one, which is the left-hand position. Copy it and paste one more time. And plug it up. Okay, so we are good to go. The animation's playing. Everything's happy. We have everything flowing right through it. So we can close down all these. We don't need to really do anything inside the actual layers themselves. And actually what you will be seeing is a bunch of warnings. So let me go ahead and bring those warnings back. I forgot because I did a test run before I restarted recording. Okay, so this is actually what you would be met with. So you have a bunch of these virtual sight bones not found. So what we want to do is we want to head over to the skeleton for our mannequin, and we want to set up the virtual bones. So the way the system's working with first person, third person, it treats them the same because everything is additive, such as the leaning and all of that. So what we do is we head over to our head bone, whichever one yours may be. We want to right click, add a virtual bone, and the target bone is going to be hand_R. So let's right click on that virtual bone, create another one, which is going to be again hand_R. Then do the last one on the hand_R bone we just did, but for hand_L. And then we can rename these. So this one's just going to be VB site, so just rename it to site. This one's going to be hand_R and hand_L. So you should have these 3 here. Now when you head back over to the animation blueprint, compile and save, everything is all happy, and we are good to go. So now we can start plugging in the rest of the character. So let's close out of all this, we still want to leave our mannequin up. See which one is, oh, that's the first person. Okay, so back in our character, let's plug in that animation class. So use our, again, the animation blueprint we just made. And there's currently a problem. So by default, for whatever reason, it is kind of rotated around 90 degrees with the idle animation. So what we want to do is we want to spin that around so it's facing the normal direction. So we head over to first person, find the idle animation. What we can do is we can open that. We want to re-import it using the proper rotation. So let's go ahead and export the asset. We're going to export animation data, first person idle FBX, hit export, and then we can go scroll down and you'll see import rotation under the transform. For the Z, we just want to plug in 90 and press re-import. And if you don't see these, press re-import once and then scroll back down and you should see it. So make sure it's set to 90. So by default, the animation is pointing and facing you. So just hit save. And now when we head back, it is facing the proper direction and we are good to go. Okay. So now what do we need to do to set everything else back up? So obviously we need to spawn the firearm into the hand. So as you can see here, we just have a helper function, which is add firearm, and then the firearm class that we want to spawn in. Well, to set that up, we have to set up a grip bone. So over here under the FPS templates section, we have the weapon grip socket. So this one, because there's no dedicated weapon bone, I'm just going to go ahead and create a socket for it. So I'm going to do that under my hand_R. So it follows the right hand. I'm going to add a socket. And I'm going to name this one to weapon socket. All right, just copy that name, head back over to our character, and paste it into the weapon grip socket like so. Then we have our camera socket, and then the camera bone, or the camera parent bone, sorry. So we want to create where we want our our camera to be attached and set up to. So if you have a dedicated camera bone, this is where you would do that. Again, I'll have a quick example at the end of this. But in our case, we're going to go to our head bone, right click, add a socket. I'm going to call mine camera, and this can be kind of positioned wherever you want. I'm just going to move mine. I guess I'll move it forwards a little bit away from the head bone. And we want to name the camera socket camera, which it already is. And then the camera socket parent bone. This part is optional, but this is going to be depending on how yours is kind of set up. So in my case, I have to use this, and I also have to use the parent socket for aiming. And again, I'll show why later. So let's uncheck that, which it should actually be unchecked by default. And we should be good to go. All right, let's compile save, hit play. And we are not spawning in because we don't have our character actually placed. So let's go ahead and drag and drop our character down into the world. We're going to search for possess in the details panel and auto possess for player 0. So now when we hit play, hit eject, we have the gun. It's just pointing the wrong direction. So I got to go ahead and move that socket around. So let's go back to our weapon socket. We're going to add a preview mesh. I'm just going to use the firearm complete since it's right there and rotate it relatively close to where I would want it to be gripping, which would be about right in that area. So let's hit save and hit play. And as you can see, the gun is actually back and down here. So there we have the gun holding the idle pose. It's obviously, you would want to make your own animations, which you will be doing, but we have it set up so we can actually go through and aim. We have our weapon lag that is going through, working just fine. We have our default sway, and we have our movement. So we move slowly, and we start running. As you can see, all that procedural stuff amplifies on top. And on top of that, we have leaning and all that kind of fun stuff already set up for you. We have our high port and our low port pose, so you can put the gun however you need it and go from there. Alrighty, so we have our character set up and aiming. And just to kind of show you a little bit better representation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab that firearm real quick, which was the M4 stripped. And I'm just going to set one of these as default. So the default part for this guy here, I'll just add a reflex sight and make that reflex sight the default. I'll be showing you how to do this later. But now we have, whoops, I don't know why I didn't auto-possess. For some reason that got disabled. Let me save that again. So now when I aim, we have our red dot, and I increase the brightness so you can see it, but we are good to go. Now, as you can see, the red dot is very hazy, and that is due to a setting in the post-process. So I'm going to click on our post-process volume here, and I believe it is the motion blur. So let's search for motion, and here we have motion blur. Just check all of these, and we're just going to set them to 0, like that. Let's save it, hit play, and when we aim, as you can see, the reticle is no longer doing that annoying little shimmer. And we still have our lag. So we are good to go. Press F so we can switch to semi-auto. We can shoot. I apologize if that's loud. Let me turn that down a little bit. We can go to full. We have our 3-round burst. And we have our safe, which obviously we cannot fire. So again, all these settings are tweakable right here inside the firearm, which I will be showing you how to use later. But okay, great. We have our character set up. Everything is good to go. We are ready to continue. The only thing that I'm going to do now is for the remainder of the tutorial, because it no longer involves the character. Oh, right, I almost forgot to mention why. So the reason for having this option, which is use parent socket for aiming, is due to the skeleton setup. So again, this is the default mannequin, so we're just using a normal socket for aiming. But if I head over here to my own character, as you can see, I have it checked, and I'm also using the camera socket and the camera socket bone. So if I head over to the skeleton, which would be, I'll just view it on the third person mesh, it might be a little bit easier. Skeleton tree. Yep, here's our head. So we have the default, which I'm just using the camera or 45 offset for viewing. So we have our camera bone. This is the actual bone that's a part of the skeleton. And then we have our camera socket. So that's where I can kind of place it anywhere where I really want and have it be, well, you can aim through it. So that's the reason for that. But because I have the camera socket or the camera bone dedicated, like built into the skeleton, I'm using that same position. I don't want to move it. So that way my animations from Blender are exactly the same. And the only difference really is just I am using, because I'm using first person arm, so I wouldn't have this whole body issue in the way. But you would normally want to position the camera bone right in the eyes, so that way your third person and first person, they have the same viewpoints. So anyways, that was just a brief overview. Now what I'm going to do for the remainder of this tutorial is I'm just going to start with the actual character that is provided, because there is no reason to continue using the mannequin because it's already set up. So I'm just going to load up the shoot house, in which case it already has my normal character, and we will continue from here. So I'll show you how to go through and set up different firearms, set up different parts, and all that fun stuff. Alrighty, now that that's over, I will see you in the next video. That should be the longest video, I think, so far. Well, that should be the longest video of this series.